Views and opinions expressed may not reflect those of the Allen County Public Library, Access Fort Wayne, and or any other supporting groups. If you are interested in producing your own programs for Access Fort Wayne, you can contact us at 260-421-1250.
Welcome to Countyline. Hi everyone, I'm Mike Green, Public Information Officer in the Allen County Commissioner's Office, and welcome to Countyline, the program that features news and information about county government. Well, our snow and our ice is finally starting to leave, winter's almost gone, and spring will be here soon. Or as they call it at the Allen County Highway Department, pothole season, because those little buggers are going to be popping up all over the place, and crews from the Highway Department will be out working on them to fill those holes as quickly as they possibly can. Rod Marquardt is a foreman with the Allen County Highway Department, and he is out today where we are out on Ernst Road in the southern part of the county, filling in as many of these holes as they can possibly find. Rod, first of all, thanks for spending some time with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
First, for folks who may not understand how a pothole gets formed exactly, it's a matter of both water and driving, I guess.
Yeah, so it starts out to be more or less like either a small hole or a crack, and then once water gets in there and it freezes, ice will expand it and blow it out and turn it into a hole.
And there's really no drainage is a big part of it too, because especially when the ground is frozen such that water has no place to go, it stays underneath the pavement.
That's correct.
And with folks driving back and forth on it, when that pavement is already the foundation of it underneath, that soil starts getting weak. Yes. The driving on it just weakens that pavement more and more.
Very much so. Yes.
Okay. Well, now we've been out watching you guys doing some work. First of all, you worked on some of the, I guess, little divots, and those are pretty easy to handle. Tell us a little bit about the process for filling those in and taking care of them.
First, it's cold mix that we use and stuff. So we use our hot box. So we put it in there and it heats it up, so it's a lot easier to shovel into the holes. And we'll put it in there and then level it off and then roll it out.
And what is cold mix made of? Is that not exactly the same thing as pavement would be, or is it something similar to it?
It's similar to it, yeah. I don't think it is. It's small gravel and stuff with a whole bunch of asphalt in there.
Okay. And then once you've got that down, you use one of your vehicles to kind of roll over the smaller ones?
The smaller ones we use a vehicle. The lot bigger ones we use a tamper.
I was going to say, explain a little bit about the tamper for us.
It's just a small vibrator we use and stuff. They can walk over it and tamper down the whole process.
That's for the medium-sized type holes.
Medium to large, yes.
Well, now we're at a site where you've got quite a pothole right here, and part of the problem that you're dealing with here also is that it's full of water.
Yes, and so we'll make a little drain for all the water to drain out of it, and it'll show us where to put the mix at they'll put in there.
Okay. Is that kind of unusual to see one like that with all that much water in it?
Yes, on the bottom of a hill or something where all the water goes down to and it can't get away. Yes.
Right. Once again, it's the drainage issue that comes into play. It's got nowhere to go, so it just sits there and weakens things even more. Now, and you were even out there having to help dig all of that out.
Sure, yes. Yeah, I'm just helping them out do that, yes.
And with the kind of winter we've had this year, are you expecting to have to deal with more potholes than usual, would you say? Or
more than usual, correct, because we have a lot more ice and frozen a lot more this year and stuff, and we have a lot of ice on the side of the roads that won't let the water through and everything. So,
how many crews do you usually have working, say, once winter is pretty much over with and you get into spring and are trying to fill these?
Usually we have in the wintertime, we try to have two. We have our hot box and we'll have a couple of trucks out running and stuff.
Okay.
In the summertime, just one.
Right. But so it's just one crew pretty much that goes around here in the southern part, and then obviously the North District would have one of their own?
That's correct. That's correct.
And how much time will you spend today on something like you spend pretty much all day?
Yeah, oh yeah, all day. Yep, all day, every day, every week. And that's these people out here doing this.
Well, Rod, we appreciate your time explaining everything to us, and good luck to you guys. You're going to have your work cut out for you, I suppose, this spring, but we appreciate the job you do very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, several of our past County Line programs have dealt with the effort that's taking place in the city and county to streamline and make more efficient the development and permitting processes that take place here in our community. One of the important parts of that is an effort to try and align city and county zoning ordinances. That has taken place. Both the city and county governments have recently approved those ordinances, and they are now in effect in our community. Clarion Associates out of Colorado has been a key part of getting this work done. Don Elliott is with Clarion Associates, and we have him with us today to spend a little time kind of explaining what the process has been and why it's important for our community. First of all, Don, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks
Thank you
for
for
the time.
having me.
Okay. Let's talk first of all, this effort to streamline ordinances is something your company has been involved with for a while now. How many of these types of projects have you been involved with?
Well, we've been doing this for about 20 years now, 22 years. And we've, as a company, we have rewritten about 130 development codes across the country, and I've been involved in 35 or 40 of them.
Okay. So from Fort Wayne and Allen County standpoint, are we kind of getting in on the ground floor on this, or are we kind of late to the party, or somewhere in between?
No, in terms of aligning the codes, the goals that were set before us, which wasn't to start over, but to take the ordinances that are there and align them and figure out how to streamline them. Both Fort Wayne and Allen County are well up towards the top of the spectrum.
Okay.
It's rare to find a city and county that do not intend to merge into one government, but still want to send a unified message to the building and development community that says, look, it's very clear what our standards are here, and you don't have to learn two different sets of rules. It's very rare to find that. So in that sense, Fort Wayne and Allen County are near the top of the stack.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about the process and how you go about it. When you come into the community, are you looking at initially finding those things which are alike that you can bring together and then work on the differences, or the other way around?
Well, we start by interviewing as many people as possible. So starting in February of 2012, we had lots of meetings to say, first of all, tell us what's broken. Tell us what works slowly or inefficiently, or places where you're confused because the county says do X and the city says do Y. So we focus first on what do the code users and the citizens want fixed in this process. Then we focus on how much can be done the same. And last, we work on the things that have to be different. So the things that have to be different are only Fort Wayne has a downtown. So it has unique downtown districts that are more complex. And only Allen County really has a lot of rural area, so they have rural zones. But in between ag and downtown, an awful lot of what happens, residential, apartments, commercial development, they happen the same. So there's a large area of overlap, and we focus on that first.
Well, I was going to ask how challenging that is, because here in our community, you have Fort Wayne, which is the second largest city in Indiana in terms of population, an urban, dense populated area. Allen County, on the other hand, largest geographical in terms of square mile in Indiana with a sparse population. How much of a challenge is that to try and keep those things which are unique, but at the same time bring together those things which you can?
Well, it is a challenge, and it took a couple of years to do it, tackling one topic at a time. First tackling, what are the standards of development? What does the county expect out of quality development versus the city? What uses do they allow in different zone districts? So it was a challenge. They're very large numbers of people, large districts. However, I will say in the same breath, there's a lot of goodwill here. There was a lot of people who were willing to say to our firm, the consultants, okay, let's look at how Fort Wayne and Allen County are different in this zone district or how they handle a shopping center. What do you recommend based on your national experience would be the best approach, and tell us why? And so what we ended up doing was there are more than 1,000 places of difference, and we had more than 1,000 footnotes that said, this time we thought the Fort Wayne approach was better, and here's why. This time we thought the Allen County approach was better, here's why. And sometimes, frankly, we don't think either one was very good, but there's another community out there that does it a different way we recommend it.
So mediator wouldn't be the correct word, but you sort of served as a referee of sorts to say, in this case, the cities should win. In this case, the counties is probably the best way to go, or we should scrap both. And here are some other ideas from the experience that we've had working with other communities.
Right, with an eye on which will be most efficient and most productive. Because from the business point of view, in terms of an investor or a property owner in Allen County and Fort Wayne, what they really want is clear rules and consistent decision making that doesn't take more time than it needs to. That's what the business community wants everywhere. And when the city and county said, our goal is to make Fort Wayne and Allen County the best place to grow and start a business, that's what they want. So often the judgment came down to which of these things can be done most efficiently. Which of these is clearest to the investor or the property owner as to what they can do. So that was a factor in which one we chose.
And something else that has to be kept in mind is watching out for the future. I mean, these are not, this is not ordinances now that are brought down on tablets of stone.
Right,
and that's the way it's going to be from here on out.
Right.
You have to leave room for changes that can't be anticipated in the future.
That's right.
And zoning ordinances that are going to have to change with those changes.
That's right. In a couple of ways. One is that even though we've tried to be as clear as possible about what kind of landscaping is required, what kind of parking, is this use allowed, there is some administrative flexibility in there. I think voters expect that if they're paying a planning staff, that planning staff will be as consistent as possible, but they'll use their judgment to make things. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. And of course, no one can bind a city council or a county commissioners from amending it in the future. However, having put this much time and energy into aligning it, we hope, and I expect that when someone comes up with an amendment in the future, there'll be two questions. Do we think this is a good thing to do for Fort Wayne? And secondly, if it's going to bring us out of line with Allen County, is it really worth it? Is it that big a deal that we ought to be diluting this message to the investors by amending this code?
As we mentioned at the outset, this is a part of a much broader overall project of trying to streamline and make more efficient the development and permitting processes going on.
Right.
How big of a part does this part of the project play in that broader picture?
Well, I think it's a big part because it is the rules that outside investors and even property owners here, that's what they look at. Can I do this, and how much is it going to cost me to do this and for? So it's a big part. The other parts were moving towards an electronic permitting system, the Acela brand system, which every government that's really interested in moving forward is trying to go to a system where things are submitted electronically and they're reviewed electronically, and you don't have to use a lot of paper, and then you get a decision electronically. So that was another big part. And a third part was customer service training, trying to work with the department to be more proactive in trying to solve problems for people. So.
You've been explaining the changes and taking questions from people in the community leading up to the implementation of these new ordinances. What's been the response, first of all, I guess, from the business and development community who have a particular interest, a big interest in what's taking place?
It's been very positive so far. One of the reasons is that Fort Wayne and Allen County, both of them, have used what's called the development plan process, a capital D, capital P. It requires a lot of things to go through a public hearing, which your competing communities do not do. The prevailing approach in zoning is to say, wherever possible, wherever you can write down, this is the standard in our community, write it down so the business community can just comply if they can, and doesn't have to go through a public hearing unless it's really a complex project. Yeah. So I think there's been a lot of acceptance that, hey, this is going to mean more consistent decisions. It's up to me whether I comply. I know what the rules are. I only get into a public hearing if it's a very big change or if I don't want to comply with the standards. And that's lean government, and that's efficient decision making. So the decisions, I think, so far, it's been very positive from the business community.
As you mentioned, a lot of input from
yeah.
that particular sector of the community.
That's right. That's right. There are always people who say, "Oh, I wish you could have changed this. My neighbor's doing X. I wish you'd make that illegal." You can't make everybody happy, right. But there's been a lot of support and very few criticisms from people that they wish we hadn't made these changes. They're hoping that they work and they get implemented.
Business and development community very interested. General public, not always so
That's
much.
Right.
I know you guys and DPS here.
Yeah.
Zoning's very, very interesting to you guys. It's not always that interesting sometimes to the public until, of course, a problem comes up or a
right.
situation comes up where
right.
they're asking questions about, isn't this zoned a certain way,
right.
or how do I get that changed, or am I in compliance?
Right.
From just a general citizen resident standpoint, if you were to try to explain to them why this is of particular importance to you, either directly or indirectly, how would you do that?
I think the most important thing is that we have built into the new ordinances that if you do commercial development, somebody has a commercial zone district, they have a right to do commercial development, and you are living next door or nearby in a residential development, under the old ordinances, you went to a public hearing and you hashed out how that's going to work. But it was troubling because I think neighbors thought, well, we don't want this to happen. We just stop it. But under Indiana law, you couldn't. Your neighbor had a right to do that, and now you're horse trading. How many trees can I get? How many shrubs can I get? Can I get him to bring down the height of the building so I don't see it? That takes a lot of time and energy from citizens. The new code says we're going to make it faster and more predictable. They're not going to do a public hearing to horse trade. Instead, the code says when you develop commercial or something else next to a residential neighborhood, you will do additional landscaping. You will bring down the height of the building. You will not put the parking lot where the headlights are going to shine into the neighboring. So a lot of what we just call residential protection standards are now standard. That is, they will do that as part of the approval. If they don't want to do that, they will have to go to a public hearing, and then you can complain, I wish they would be made to do that. But you make it automatic and say, you want to the business community,
right.
You want to get through this fast, protect the neighborhoods. And you tell the neighborhoods, the new codes say to the neighborhood, don't worry, you are protected. You don't need to have a horse trading session on each one of these things.
So there are protections of sorts in place,
Absolutely.
So that it's not so much weighed heavily in favor of business and development, although they still can do pretty much
right.
what they intend to do, but at the same time,
right.
in a way that doesn't disturb a neighborhood or a residential area.
Well, in order to have a great city, in order to be a good place to start and grow a business, it's important that the business community knows they can invest with confidence and confidence what the answer will be. But you also have to have great neighborhoods. People don't move their businesses or grow them unless they can envision themselves living in this community. I'd like to live here. My executives would like to live here. My employees. So every zoning ordinance needs to protect strong neighborhoods, enable business to do business, and the trick is where those things butt up against each other. And the closer you can get to saying, we've got a set of standards that protect the interests of both parties, the better you can have people have efficient government.
Don, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. You did make it interesting for us. But this is an important step for the community, both in terms of what it's going to mean for business and development, and as you mentioned, what it is going to mean for residential areas as well. We appreciate your time very much.
Thank you very much.
And for those of you who want to know more about these city and county zoning ordinances and how they align with one another, you can go to the Department of Planning Services webpage. Go to our webpage, www.allencounty.us/DPS, and on the homepage of Department of Planning Services, you will be able to find both the new city and county zoning ordinances. In 2005, the Allen County Board of Commissioners approved an ethics ordinance and policy for county employees and elected officials. It also created an ethics commission at that time to help educate employees and to oversee any questions about ethical or unethical conduct within county government. Recently, the ordinance has been changed. It has had several revisions made, and the Ethics Commission itself has undergone somewhat of a change. It's been expanded from 3 to 5 members. Abe Schwab is an associate professor in the Department of Philosophy at IPFW. He serves on the Ethics Commission, and he is the chairman of the commission. And we want to talk to him a little bit about the ethics policy in government, how that operates, and also the job and role of the commission in helping to ensure trust among citizens of Allen County and their government. First of all, Abe, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Besides being an associate professor of philosophy, you also have a background in, I guess you'd say, well, ethics training, ethics teaching. Tell us a little bit about that so folks know about that.
Yeah, so, well, I've been teaching ethics at the university for, I guess it's 14 years now, in some way or another. But then I also do a lot of community outreach where I'm instructing, sort of helping the general public understand the ethical issues they're grappling with in a lot of areas of applied ethics. So my primary area is medical ethics, but I also do work in business ethics and then professional ethics, which ties most closely to the work of the Ethics Commission because it connects to the professional responsibilities of county employees.
So you're pretty much a natural for this position, it would
Yeah.
seem like.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about ethics in government, and there are probably people out there watching who would say, well, that's kind of like oil and water. And I'm sure in the past, at other levels of government, they feel they have enough evidence to make that kind of claim. How important is an ethics ordinance and an ethics commission to a government entity like Allen County?
Well, I mean, I think it's important for a couple of reasons. One is that this kind of document serves to maintain transparency within the government, so that when there are issues that might come up where an individual might be concerned that the work of the county is being undermined in some way or is being challenged in some way or isn't being done as well as it could be, this provides an opportunity for them to say, listen, I think there's something going on here. We need somebody to look into it, and the Ethics Commission then provides that possibility. It also makes it so that the people of Allen County are in a better position to trust the work of Allen County because they know, listen, here is a mechanism by which any conflict of interest that comes up is made transparent for anybody who wants to see it to see. And so it works to both ensure the integrity of the work of the people of Allen County, but then also ensure the trust within the trust of the county government.
Now this takes into account employees as well as elected officials to a certain degree, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What are some of the things that the ordinance deals with? What kind of areas are involved?
Basically, it's going to deal with issues where an individual has a personal benefit separately derived. It's often called a conflict of interest. Okay. That is, they're pulled in two different directions. So on the one hand, they have responsibilities associated with their role within the county government, and then on the other hand, they have responsibilities in their personal life or other separate professional responsibilities, or maybe they have a job that they moonlight at. And so then these might create them, this might put them in a position where their responsibilities pull them in separate directions. And so then the Ethics Commission is meant to sort of help people navigate that situation where they have a conflict of interest. So it covers those, that's the primary emphasis. Mm-hmm. I mean, and these conflicts of interest can arise in a number of ways, but one of them that most people are interested in is the question of gifts or payments. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly one area of conflict of interest, but you can also have concerns about familial relationships and conflicts of interest. And so ultimately, it's meant to make it so that people have confidence, right? It covers conflicts of interest primarily so that people have confidence in what the county is doing.
And we're not necessarily talking about, say, like a criminal activity like bribery or something along those lines. Obviously, that is unethical, but we're talking in large part about areas that maybe are not quite so black and white, not clearly right or wrong. For example, acceptable gifts. You may be able to accept a gift determined based on a couple of factors. Can you kind of give us an idea of what we might be talking about there?
Well, ultimately, the commission doesn't identify exactly what makes for any acceptable gift, so it's not going to provide that. But ultimately, the idea is that what the commission is meant to deal with is not necessarily the illegal activities like bribery, which is also a conflict of interest, but it's a baldly illegal
Yeah.
and unethical conflict of interest. Instead, the worry is about more insidious conflicts of interest. That is, conflicts of interest where the individual is well-intentioned, but the gift is such that it compromises their ability to do their job. So it's not that they're intentionally. So the commission isn't here to sort of deal with necessarily the case of the individual who's intentionally doing something wrong, but is also there to help out with the individual who's well-intentioned, but is then put in the situation where some separate interest pulls them away from their responsibilities, not because they consciously decide to do that, but in an unconscious pull. Because part of this has to do with the fact of how we work as human beings. If I give you a gift, even if it's a small gift, people feel some obligation of reciprocity there. And so then the worry is that as the gift gets larger, the feeling of reciprocity becomes greater. And so no matter how well-intentioned you may be, you end up making a mistake. There's a quick story from the city of Waterloo in Ontario that the city treasurer was really good friends with a financial firm that was organizing the payment for this public park.
Okay.
So they were going to borrow money from this financial firm for the public park. And they were really good friends. They'd gone on golf outings together. But there was no bribery. There was no malicious intent on the part of the city treasurer and one of his subordinates. But as it turned out, they gave to their city council a terrible contract because they never read the final draft.
Right.
And they didn't read the final draft because they were good friends with the guy. And so it wasn't that they had intentionally done something to undermine the city's financial interests. It's that they had been blinded by, the relationship that they had. And so then as a result, even though they were well-intentioned, they ended up costing the city more than $100 million.
The one thing I think about, having worked in government now for several years, around the holidays, someone will drop a gift basket off at the commissioner's office, like a fruit basket. Now, there's no way you're going to get a commissioner to vote a certain way because they got a fruit basket from you. But it's the appearance of that, and that's, as you pointed out, that's one of the important things that this ordinance, I guess, helps bring into focus for employees. It's as the public looks at it from the outside, are they going to be questioning whether you're playing fair and square when that kind of thing happens?
Yeah, so ultimately, there's a couple of ways in which this addresses the appearance question. One is that by making it so that individuals submit a disclosure to the Ethics Commission when they get these kinds of gifts that are valued above a certain level, they're no longer a nominal gift. This makes it so that you use public shame as a possible way to control behavior. Right. That is, if you would be, because once it's a disclosure, then it becomes public information. And so if you would be ashamed of your neighbor finding out that you got this gift, and so then this creates a way to discourage you from accepting untoward gifts. So in a certain sense, the idea is that by making it transparent, then you use you encourage an individual to be self-regulating rather than trying to undermine it. And so this then makes it so that if individuals are worried, right? So let's say that you're like, well, this county decision is terrible. I'm worried that they were that part of the reason they made this decision was because of some separate financial interest that they have, then you can request the disclosures and we'll be able to see, did they have that kind of relationship that you're worried about? So it encourages trust in a couple of ways. One, by encouraging the self-regulation of the employees and elected officials, and the other by making it so that individuals can check into and see if there actually was evidence of a compromised decision.
Well, let's talk a little more now about the role of the Ethics Commission itself. What do you see that role as being in terms of the ethics ordinance and the application of that?
Ideally, the Ethics Commission's role is to prevent the problems before they arise. Right. And I think that can happen in a couple of ways. One is through education, so that people are aware of when their judgment might be compromised. And another is when an individual isn't sure, they can actually ask a question of the commission and say, can you give me an opinion about this particular issue because I'm not sure. And so those are two ways that we can keep anything from becoming a problem, right? But then once we get to the point of a problem, then one of the things that can happen is an individual can file a complaint with the Ethics Commission, at which point the Ethics Commission, depending on the complaint, may dismiss it, may say, we have to look into this, And so they may start an investigation, and in the worst of possible cases, then turn things over to the prosecutor's office.
And the Ethics Commission is not a policing agency as such.
Right, so we don't go around looking right for things. Instead, we have quarterly meetings in which we go over whatever disclosures have come in and any other issues that have come up. Now, that's typically we have quarterly meetings. If someone submits a request for an advisory opinion, then we may meet sooner. And if they submit a complaint, then we are required by the ordinance to meet within, I think it's 14 days. And so as a result, that means that we may have to meet more often. But if no complaints are filed, then it's.
And you're also not really a punishing agency. You don't necessarily mete out punishment, but you can make recommendations to the person or the body that oversees a certain employee if there's been a complaint filed and you find that there's reason to believe that they did something they shouldn't have been doing. You can make some recommendations toward that.
Yeah, so we can certainly provide feedback, and then there's a certain kind of public activity that we can take, but it's not punishment in the sense of jail time or firing or demoting. Certainly we can do none of those things, but we can make a note in public and sort of say, here's, it's sort of like if you think about it like the ethics commissions of even like the United States Congress, which may not be our model, but nonetheless, they can provide a censure, which doesn't really, doesn't in an effective way do something, but it provides a public statement that this person has behaved inappropriately.
What would you like to see? Anything within our ordinance right now that hasn't been addressed that needs to be looked at?
Right now, I don't think there are any huge oversights, and I think that the commissioners did a great job of updating it. One of the things that we included that wasn't before, which I think was just an easy oversight, was before it wasn't required that a supervisor sign the disclosure. But actually, that seems to be important because we want a supervisor to know if somebody got a gift, and so now we simply require the supervisor to have the disclosure to sign the disclosure as well, so it's clear that this is information that's available within the whole chain of command. One thing that I constantly push for, although I'm not sure that the ordinance is the place to do it, is that ultimately the best strategy for conflicts of interest is just to avoid them as much as possible. Disclosure is the common strategy within our culture because it's a way to sort of try and handle it. But disclosure can become too much of a panacea. And so ultimately the emphasis should be on avoidance as much as possible. Most of the cases, most of the disclosures we see, aren't significant concern. But if there is a case in which an individual has any question about it, and this is what we said last week as well, if you have a question about it, that pretty much is your answer, right? Like if you're not sure, then you probably shouldn't take it because
if it doesn't feel right,
exactly,
to a degree,
because then then it may not be right independently, and then it's certainly not going to look right.
And even if it does feel right in your mind, because you know all of the different factors that are involved, you have to think of it from a person outside looking in, and what are they going to think?
Right, and so that's why the disclosure helps to do that as well, because then it might raise a flag, but then it also makes it so that if an individual has a question from the outside, they can also look at it, right? And so, I mean, I think ultimately the point of the whole ordinance and the point of the commission is to, maintain the integrity of county government and maintain the trust within county government, and if possible, improve those. Because the goal here is to make it so that the county government is operating in a way that is ethically sound and that the people know that it's ethically sound. And so that's sort of the ultimate point.
And that's the goal, and we hope we can always meet that goal as much as possible. Abe Schwab, Chairman of the Allen County Ethics Commission, thanks a lot for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll do it for this edition of County Line. We thank you for joining us. A reminder, this edition of County Line and previous programs can be viewed through our video on demand service as well as on our YouTube channel. You can reach both of those sites by going to allencounty.us. I'm Mike Green, Public Information Officer in the Allen County Commissioner's Office, and we will see you again next time on County Line.